So I know that there are lots of schools of thought around how versatile you need to be as a food photographer. And being versatile, honestly, does not mean that you have to know every single, technical style of photography. But what it means is that, within your given skill set, are you able to cover the entire spectrum? Are you able to create photos for a range of moods, a range of colors, range of patterns, range of foods, range of light? This is your host, Dyutama, but you can call me DJ. And I love to inspire food photographers to dream. I spent 15 years as an architect studying buildings and constructing hospitals before taking the biggest leap of faith of my life, which was setting up a food styling and food photography business right from scratch. If you're a dreamer like me, wanting to start a new photography business or grow your existing food photography business, jump right into a world where I share practical, actionable strategies to improve your photography skills, to work with clients, make more money, all with a fearless mindset. This is the My Food Lens podcast, and we take you one step closer to your dreams. So let's go. Hola! Today I'm bringing to you a special episode. It's a bit saucy, a little peppery, a bit exciting. I'm bringing to you an episode in which I was a guest on someone else's podcast. I was a guest on Kimberly Espinel's podcast called Eat, Capture, Share. So Kimberly is a food photographer based in London. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her work. And my chat with her was just so power-packed, so powerful, that I just had to share it with you. So in this episode, I talk about so many things. Okay, so just stay with me as I tell you everything I talk about. So I talk about what it takes to run a successful creative business and everything that goes into it. So we speak on a variety of food photography and business related topics, including how I was able to leave a corporate career to start my business in food photography. What it takes to bring client work to your business. How do you keep those clients? And how do you stand out? How do you stand out as a photographer in the market? How do you write pitches? And how to not depend on social media alone to find food photography work? And also the key to delivering a memorable client experience, which we all know is absolutely key to running a profitable business. So this episode, my dear friend, is packed with so much info. It's like boom, boom, boom. So much info. Whether you're starting a business, you're thinking of starting a business, or you're in the thick of it, hopefully it will leave you with a ton of takeaways that you can immediately put into practice. I think that's important. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right in.
I always start the podcast with introductions because there may be people tuning in who don't know you, who've not come across your Instagram and your work. So please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Dyutama, and I'm an architect and food photography entrepreneur based in Singapore. I'm a food stylist. I'm an editorial and commercial food photographer. I'm also an educator, and I host a food photography and business podcast called My Food Lens. I also have a 2.5-year-old daughter. I'm a pooch mom, and I take my wine very seriously.
Oh, that's so fun. Oh, awesome. And where are you based?
I'm based in Singapore.
Amazing. Now that's a place I have never been, but I would love to go to. In fact, I think the podcast episode just before you see ours, he's also based in Singapore.
Oh, yes.
It always looks so beautiful.
It is. It's a food paradise, just like London.
Yeah. Just you have sun and we don't. Anyways, I'd love to know how you made the switch from architecture to food photography. Please talk us through your journey.
I just love it when somebody asks me this question. You know how you jump off from a cliff and then you make it, but then you look up and then you realize what you just did. That's pretty much sums my journey to food photography. So my journey, Kimberly, has really been all about taking risks, making like huge leaps of faith, and just moving forward with that conviction that it's going to work out. So I was an architect. So between studying and practicing architecture, I was in architecture for 15 years. And my specialty was healthcare. So I was designing hospitals. I designed hospitals in many cities around the world, including Singapore, which is where I designed two large hospitals. And I was taking a break from architecture and I was doing everything I love. And cooking was definitely on top of my list. My sister told me about Instagram. So I just started taking bad photos of my cooking, posting them on Instagram. And one day, somebody wanted to hire me and they wanted me to take photos of their food for their brand. And I was like, whoa, wait 1 minute. Like I'd never thought of that. It came like a possibility that had never crossed my mind. And one thing that I need to mention is that when I was in the corporate world, there were many times that I'd contemplated having something of my own. But you know how healthcare projects, they're huge and there's like big teams involved, big bucks involved. So an independent consultant, a solo person, I wouldn't have made it. And so I toggled with that idea many times and I just let it go. So when this person came up with, oh, can you take photos of my food? Just something just struck me. And I was like, is this something I need to think about? This could be something real. Like there was a feeling in my gut and I was like, I just need to do this. It was so different from what I had done before, a completely new path. And so I just decided to start a food photography business at that time. That one message changed everything for me. But what I do want to mention is that at this time, there were two very important things that were going on. One, I had never used a DSLR in my life. I had never taken a photo on manual mode. Yeah, just click the auto mode, go for it. So I had no idea of using a DSLR. I had, however, a ton of experience with composition, scale, proportion, colors, balance, harmony, because that was my architectural background. And this was a piece of the puzzle that fit very naturally for me, very intuitively for me. But when it came to technicality, the technique of taking a photo, that wasn't quite there. The other thing that was very important that was going on at that time was I was at a very important threshold of my life. I had many architecture job offers on the table. So I had a six-figure salary. I was making a six-figure salary in architecture. And if I would have taken up those offers, I could have made way more. So I was at a very difficult juncture where I could either go to making so much more and continuing on my architecture path, or I could just start from zero. And you know what I did? So I just chartered into unknown territory. And I like to say this, it's not my original, but it's Jasmine Star's original. You would know this. So when I chartered into unknown territory, I was uneducated, unqualified, and unfunded. So I had no education about photography. I was unqualified about business. I had no experience. And I was unfunded because I had not planned or saved for it. So yeah, that's where I was. And yet I had gone ahead and just declared I'm going to start a food photography business. So I put myself on a timer. I literally gave myself 4 months. I told all my, please let me come back to you in 4 months. And in those 4 months, the first thing I did was I signed up for a 2-hour workshop where I went and just learned the interface of my camera. I had a rusty old 10-year-old camera. I learned manual mode, and then I just started practicing. The other thing was that I was very clear that I wanted to get into commercial food photography. That means I had to shoot for restaurants, which means that I had to know artificial light because Singapore weather is such, it either rains or there's too much sun. So in those 4 months, like at the end of those 4 months, I was not just okay with, comfortable using a camera on manual mode. I'd also learned how to use artificial light. Not a pro, but I knew how to assemble, the gear. I knew how I could do it for a client. So at the end of those 4 months, I just went ahead and registered my business in Singapore. And I went ahead and I told all those clients, thank you so much for considering me, but I have chosen a different path. And starting from there, I started working like my tail was on fire. And I feel so grateful about it. But in the next 3 months, I had my first two clients, and one of them was the largest retailer in Singapore. So that just gave me so much encouragement. It was a great start to my journey. And I think I have just carried on with that mindset of take risks, make huge leaps of faith, fall off the cliff, and just have the conviction, that it will work out. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, no worries. I don't know if you were in a similar position. I think for me, what made things easier, and I think it is important to mention, is, I had a partner. So if for whatever reason the business didn't go well, I had that to fall back on, and I had savings. So I wonder, is that something you had as well, savings and a partner that, if all went pear-shaped, that was your safety net?
No, I think that's such a great point that you bring up. I wouldn't say that I had like a ton of savings, but yes, at that time, my circumstances did allow me to jump off the cliff. I had a supportive partner who was doing fairly well, and I did not have children at that time. So my commitments were a lot limited. However, I did have a child when I was in the first 2 years of my business. Yes. That was very tough.
Yes. So when did you start your business? Like, how many years ago is that now?
So technically this is my 4th year, but in between I had a baby.
Yeah, so, gotcha. So you took a little bit of time off. And
I took a bit of time off, and it went a bit up and down, but yeah, this is my 4th year going.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned something that I'd love to delve a little bit deeper into. And you said that one of your very first clients was a very big supermarket, a big retailer. And I know that there's so many people tuning in who are like, I'd love to shoot for an established client, a client who really knows what they want, and, a big brand, a big name. So I'd love to know why you think they chose you, what you feel that you brought to the table that made you stand out, and what anybody tuning in who's maybe still struggling to find clients, what they could or should focus on to attract the type of clients that you've attracted.
So I think definitely the starting point has to be your good quality, authentic work. And I think the way I got that project was through word of mouth. So people see your project, people see your work on social media, and then they go and recommend you. And then, the client sees your work and they like it and they want to work with you. So creating good quality, authentic work, it's a non-negotiable. It's really a starting point if you want to begin the conversation with any client. So create something that differentiates you, create something that no one else is doing in the market. And honestly, it's not that difficult as it sounds. You just need to hone in on who you are, what speaks to you, and create from that place. So I think that, that way, I think clients definitely look for someone who can create good, authentic, original work, something different. The other thing is, I feel like you cannot just be another food photographer. This is something I actually learned in architecture. I feel like as food photographers, our role is not just about setting up a camera and taking photos. So when I was in architecture, one of the skills that we really worked on was interpretation and conceptualization. I know it's a mouthful, but when you're a part of an architecture firm and then you're competing with other big giant firms, what does it boil down to? It boils down to how well do you understand requirements and how creatively can you offer solutions, right? Whenever we go in and we say, we have a brief, or sometimes we complain, we don't have a clear brief, the requirements are not very clear. That's an opportunity. That's exactly what we want. That's where we have the power to go in and prove that we bring something else to the table, and clients really appreciate it. So sometimes clients can express their requirements. Sometimes they have a clear art direction, but sometimes they don't. So what we need to do is, if we can interpret their requirements and really break it down to the detail where we start getting into their skin, into their minds, and then we come up and we present our own solutions to fulfill those requirements. Like, that is definitely a differentiator where, for this project, this big project that I had, all I was given was, here are 3 recipes that we are shooting. Go look at our website and create. It was a very broad outline and I had to work around it. So I made sure that I was asking the right questions. I made sure that I was really getting into the mind of the client and, putting my own creative thought into it and adding value as a photographer, not just sitting there taking notes and saying, okay, fine, I'll just do this. You've already done that. I've actually I presented ideas, they liked a few, and that's what we went. So interpretation and conceptualization, I think this is something that we as food photographers can really bring to the table and clients appreciate it. The other thing I feel that really helped me is demonstrating versatility. So I know that there are lots of schools of thought around how versatile you need to be as a food photographer. And being versatile honestly does not mean that you have to know every single technical style of photography, but what it means is that within your given skill set, are you able to cover the entire spectrum? Are you able to create photos for a range of moods, a range of colors, range of patterns, range of foods, range of lights? So I have a client and they have like 5 brands under them. Each brand has a different language. So I'm their only photographer. So when I shoot for them, I'm just switching between the different types of branding that I need to create through my photos. That doesn't mean that I need to go and do levitation or I need to do videos. That's not my expertise. But what is within my skill set, I'm able to create a range within that. So that to me is versatility. And I think that is something that definitely brands look for, when they see that, okay, it's from moody to yellows to savory to sweets and to harsh light to soft light to. So I think
I have to say I think that's also my superpower, because I think that's my superpower too. And not just that, but when I hire food stylists or assistants, I really look at how versatile they are. So if their whole entire feed is just cupcakes and muffins, like I just don't know, actually, not even that I can't trust. I just don't know that they'll be able to do all the things that I need them to do on the shoot on the day. So I would never hire somebody with an Instagram like that, for example. And, so I look at it as somebody who hires, and then so I really look for versatility in my assistants. And then obviously I also look at what clients ask of me. And it's always, as you describe, so varied. There's so much, always within my style, always, it sounds like within your style, with your touch, but still having that, being kind of like a shapeshifter, I think definitely helps. I can attest to that for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I was wondering, again, there's something else that you mentioned a little bit earlier that I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into, because a lot of photographers, once they have a client, they feel okay-ish about, making it happen and fulfilling the brief. But a lot of people stumble really at the very first hurdle, which is getting a client, or not stumble, but they don't get quite as many clients as they would like. And one of the things you mentioned at the start was that a supermarket brand that came through word of mouth. And so I would love to know a little bit more about word of mouth and where you put that in terms of importance and how you nurture that referral channel, so to say, but also any other ways that you have attracted clients, any other kind of marketing techniques that you have used.
So I would say that definitely word of mouth is very powerful, and word of mouth can only work if you've done a good job, or that someone is really impressed by your work and they know that you fit that particular project. So I think word of mouth is definitely, it comes into play when you have worked with a certain client and they might want to recommend you, or you have a really good network within your, within your city, town, or however, and they are, they have all these connections and they are happy to recommend you. So word of mouth works in those ways. But honestly, Kimberly, for me, I spent a large bulk of my first few months pitching. And I can't even tell you the kind of clients that I've got just by creating effective pitches. And for me, that is definitely one of the strongest ways, because you cannot sit around and wait that word of
Love
mouth will
it.
get you. You
Well,
cannot.
you can just not sit around and wait full stop, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think, yes, yeah, like you have to be proactive. You have to, it's your business is your baby, right? So you need to go out
absolutely.
and make it happen for your baby.
Yeah.
So
And no
yeah.
matter where you are in your journey, you might be a seasoned photographer with
Mm,
10 years of experience under your belt. You will still want to work with some people. And it's not necessary that they know you and that
mm,
their word of mouth will get around town. You need to go approach them. So I just feel that we cannot go around the whole idea of pitching. You have to put yourself out there. You have to tell people about yourself. And you also cannot just completely depend on social media. Yes, you create work and yes, people are viewing it, but that is not going to be 100% the way people or clients will come to you. They will first come to you, or they will get to know about you, or they will see your pitch, and then they
mm-hmm,
might go check out your social media. And
mm,
then they'll be like, do I like it? And then, there's that back and forth. But I just feel like pitching is so effective. It's really your.
wonderful. So I'm going to break it down in a couple of separate questions. So my very first question is, where do you get the confidence, the guts to pitch? Because I know, pitching is not easy. Pitching is really not easy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so many people feel subconscious about it. And so that would be my very first question. Like, how do you overcome that? Oh, that fear and
I
all those
know.
those kind of, emotions.
I know. I think that fear and those emotions actually come from the fear of rejection. I think it comes from the fear that what if I don't hear back, which happens a lot. It happens with what if they say no, like, just putting yourself out there, sending that email into the universe and
Yeah.
just hoping that it's going to work out. I think that is the fear.
Yeah.
So I think the way to do this is, first of all, you have to jump off the cliff. You want it, you jump off the cliff, boss. The second thing is that you have to do the work. You have to put an effective pitch. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
copy and paste a pitch to 10 different clients and write the same thing about how great a photographer you are and expect them to be like, yay, we are so excited to work with you. That is not the way it works. So you have to put out an effective pitch. And honestly, once you put out that pitch, you will start seeing replies, and that will build confidence. So it will start with you doing it right. I actually have a very, very life-changing story around this. Do you want me to share that?
Yeah, go for it.
So, how I learned to pitch was also in architecture school. And it's one of the most powerful things that I've learned, not just for my profession, but also personally. So when I was in architecture school, I was in the US, and we had professionals from all over the country who would come and spend some time in our college. We would have these social evenings where we could mingle with them. And based on that mingling and interaction, those professionals would then invite a selected set of students to go out for dinner with them. And, that would also be like a potential interview, and our careers depended on it. All right. But the problem was that when you were mingling, you only had like 3 minutes. You had 3 minutes to make an impression so solid that you would get invited either for that lunch, dinner, or coffee, and you would make it through that interview and get hired by one of the top firms in the country. You can imagine how nerve-wracking that was. And, so basically imagine that in 3 minutes, you have to give out your elevator pitch. As a student, who knows that, right? So I sucked at it. I was so bad at it. And my professor, one of my mentor professors, he saw that. He saw that I had potential, I had capability, but I was really losing on to these opportunities because, one, I had the fear of making conversation, and two, I did not know what to say. So I would stand there for 3 minutes in silence and move on to the next person. So he called, a few of us had this problem, and he called all of us and he said that, do you know that you have the power to make someone feel like they are having the best conversation of their lives when they're speaking to you? Do you know that you have that power and you're not using it? And we were just listening. And he said, Do you know how to do that? You do that by talking about them. When you talk to somebody about them, you make them feel important. You make them feel like you are interested. And automatically, when someone feels like you are interested in them, they are interested in you. The conversation is not about you, it is them. Focus on that. And that is exactly how I put out my pitches. That is exactly the practice I not only bring to my clients and my business, but also personally and with friends and relations. So when you make the other person the center of the stage, you have a higher chance of grabbing their interest. And that is something that has been very effective in the way I've pitched to big brands and small brands. And most of the times it ends up with a response. Yes or no is a different thing, but there is a response.
And that is already in lots of ways a win, right? Like if somebody acknowledges your email, whatever the outcome, in such a vulnerable situation that is cold pitching, then I think them responding already feels like they've seen me. And I didn't go into their spam. There's like some sort of communication on which you can potentially build, maybe not now, but in the future. So that's amazing. That's a really valuable tip. I really appreciate that. Do you have any more pitching tips for people tuning in who are like, oh, I don't know where to start? Maybe 3, 4, perhaps even 5, rapid fire pitching tips. That would be amazing.
So definitely a pitch has to start with a personal connection. I think a personal connection is very important. Like there are so many brands that I've pitched to, and it's just unbelievable how there were so many brands and chefs who were actually architects previously. It's unbelievable. So I have that, personal connection, and I start off with that. So find a common ground, find some commonality, and build a personal connection. And that may or may not happen, but find it. I think the other thing that should be done is there has to be some kind of an expression of why you want to work with them. It is about them. That pitch is about them. So it's not just for the pitch, honestly, but it's also to give you clarity. Do you fit in them? And does that brand fit with your style? So why you want to work with them is another thing that you can include in a pitch. And I think dining experiences are like very, very effective. I got to work with one of the biggest hospitality names in the world. I used to photograph for the Singapore hotel, and I got my foot in the door by writing a pitch which said, I've been to your restaurants and my favorite pizza place in town is blah, blah, blah restaurant. The next day I got a phone call and they said, looks like you're already familiar with our brand. You love our pizzas. We love your work. Would you like to come in for a chat? So it's as simple as that. It has to be genuine and honest, but create that reason why you want to work with them. And something that I personally feel is very, very powerful that sets your pitch completely apart is by including something that very few people know about. Something. So whenever we write a pitch, we don't just write to a brand, right? We don't say, hi, Cadbury's, hi, Bonvita, hi, Maggie. We don't say that. We say, hi, Kimberly, hi, John, hi. We're addressing it to a person. So we need to do our homework. We need to scour the internet. You're like, literally, like just pull up stories, news, anything that gives you a little bit of insight, something that no one might have known or people might not be talking about, and include that in your pitch so it immediately grabs attention. So this thing where I talked about the chef who was an architect. He owns 3 Michelin star restaurants in Singapore. Yeah. And when I was pitching to him, I was shaking. What I did was I went and I scoured so many media articles. And there was one like maybe 6 years ago. And in that media article, there was a teeny tiny statement, that's one line that said, he shifted from architecture to becoming a chef. And I was like, bingo. So you just have to spend the hour and create something that is immediately, it's not just a personal connection, but whosoever is reading that pitch, they're like, shh, they've done their homework, boss. This person is interesting. Let's talk to them. So I think these would be my like top 3 pitching ideas.
They're amazing. Yeah. I think they're really helpful and really things that will allow you to stand out, because it shows that you care. It shows that you've done your research, and it doesn't feel like a cut and paste, which is what you were talking about in the
Yeah,
beginning. There's
absolutely.
a lot of attention to detail there. So those are incredible tips. Thank you so, so much. I would love to know, before we start wrapping the interview up, what you feel, if there's one thing that the last few years have taught you, what do you feel clients value the most? What is it that allows you to provide a really high level client experience?
I think I'll have to say the number one thing has to be, again, personalization. And this is backed by research. I'm not just saying it. I think so. As an architect, I was also doing a ton of research. And the last research paper that I wrote was on client experience. Coincidentally, it was all about patient. Yeah, it was all about patient experience. And so we did a research for a year and we came up with all the variables that impact experience. So a patient is also a client. And the number one thing that emerged in that research was personalization. And I think it's so powerful, irrespective of industry, to be honest, like whether it's healthcare or food photography, the moment you start tailoring and customizing every little thing based on your client's particular requirements, it's a total winner. Like right from pitching, it's not a copy paste, like we said. And even your personal interactions, I think when you're in a meeting, you walk in doing your homework, like we talked about, the owner, the director, the CEO, whosoever you're meeting, you walk in knowing their story, you personalize your conversation with them. They love it because you're talking to them about them. You're giving them the best conversation of their lives. You're personalizing every single thing. And whether it is their brand concept, whether it is, the after service that you provide, did the campaign go smoothly, like everything where you are invested personally, it is all about them. I think that is on top of my list of how to create an exceptional client experience.
I love it. That's a beautiful tip. Thank you so much for sharing so much value. Now, you mentioned in the beginning that you have a podcast too. Firstly, I'd love to know why you decided to start your podcast. And then can you share a little bit more about what to expect, what it's about? Please share a little bit more about it.
So I know you're a visionary, Kimberly. I know that you're a planner and you do everything like that. I'm really like a jump off the cliff kind of a person. So my podcast was literally one day sitting at the window on an early morning, watching the sunrise. My husband walked into the room and there was a thought in my mind. I just turned around. I told him, I want to start a food photography podcast. And he said, why? I said, because I feel it. I feel it. I'm feeling it. And he said, how are you going to do it? Do you know how to do it? I said, no. He said, when are you going to do it? I said, I don't know. He said, do you have any knowledge about it? I said, no. So he said, great. Sounds like a plan. Go for it. So it was a gut feeling. Like there are modes of education that you connect to, right? And for me, podcast is a very effective way of learning. And I deeply connect with it. For some people, it's videos. For some people, it's PDFs. For me, it's podcasting. And there was just this feeling. And I know that I had listened to your podcast for many years, but I'd also listened to a lot of architecture podcasts and business podcasts. And, some of them were my favorites. So there was a way that I was learning. And I felt like I just wanted to bring all of that together and create this medium of learning for the community. So it was a very spontaneous decision, but it was, again, with a ton of conviction. And it was so bizarre that my husband said, okay, go for it. He turned around, he walked out of the room. I was sitting on my desk. I opened my email, and out of one of the newsletters that I was subscribed to, an email popped up saying, how to start a podcast. It is so it's so crazy. It was like a sign. But anyway, here I am. We are on our episode 30 now. 30.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's going so far, so good. I feel very committed, and it is really something very close to my heart.
Yeah.
So I'd love to share what it's about. Yeah.
Go for it. Yes. Also, is it weekly episodes that you do?
Yes. So we do weekly episodes. We don't
Gotcha.
break between seasons unless there's a personal obligation. So I try to keep it weekly for sure.
That's a big commitment. Amazing.
It is. it's a full-time job. It's a full-time
it
job.
really is. Right. So yes, please do share what it's about.
Absolutely. So my podcast is called My Food Lens, and it's a podcast for all food content creators. So it is for food stylists, food photographers, and they can be like both hobbyists or businesses. It's also for food bloggers and just basically anyone who creates food related content for various kinds of media. So in the podcast, we talk about everything. It's like from food photography techniques to composition techniques. We talk about storytelling and how to grow a food photography business. And I think the most important piece of the puzzle, which is a positive mindset, just to stay creative as an artist and just to stay, inspired as a business owner, as a creator. So I would say if you take photos of food for any reason, then the podcast is for you.
Amazing.
And we are available on all major podcast platforms as well.
Fantastic. Tima, as you listen to the podcast, you know how I end it, which is by asking my guests about their most favorite thing to eat, their most favorite thing to capture, and their most favorite thing to share. So I'd love to know the answers to those questions from you too.
Oh, wow. Okay. I know you're a vegan. You might not like my answer. But all right. My favorite thing to eat is really biryani. I'm sorry, Kimberly.
I don't even know what it's made with, because I've had vegetarian biryani. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Which is like a rice, right? Biryani. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but what is the traditional way to make it?
So biryani is basically meat and rice cooked together with a ton of spices, and every region of India has their own version of biryani. My favorite version is my mom's version.
Of course.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, it's not vegan, but it's pretty darn delicious. All right. So what I like to capture, okay. My favorite thing to capture. This is so difficult because as a photographer, it's like choosing your favorite child. But, I think I like to photograph fresh produce. And for me, there's a very close tie between mushrooms and cherry tomatoes. So just their form, their color, their shape, the way they catch light. And even if you just put them in a bowl, they are so attractive and so photogenic. So,
and also tomatoes always do well on Instagram. I don't know.
Oh,
Instagram
really?
loves tomatoes. What it is.
I think it's the red. I just love cherry tomatoes, shooting them.
Wonderful. What's your what would you like to share with our listeners? Anything that you'd like to share?
So I thought about this. I most definitely don't share my food. So I was thinking, what else do I like sharing? And I think I love sharing stories. So my entire journey in photography, my entire presence on social media, everything stems from the idea of storytelling. Like if you look at my photos, the funny reels that I make or the captions, even if you meet me in person, you're bound to hear stories. So I think that is probably my favorite thing to share.
Amazing. Tima, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing so much value. And it's been a joy to have you.
It was such a pleasure, such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for having me. So, how was that for you? Did it leave you with some actionable tips, like how to craft a pitch or how to conduct yourself in your next meeting or how to jump off a cliff? I don't know. If you've been on the fence about starting a business or you're stuck with your business, I really hope that this episode gave you some fuel to start or to restart, Hope it left you with at least a little bit of inspiration to keep going, to do something new, to push those boundaries, and to really feel joy in whatever you create. But like always, if you have any questions on any of the topics that we talked about, because we talked about a lot of things, So if you have any questions on any of the topics, like writing a pitch or client experience or anything, boss, just send me an email on hello@myfoodlens.com and I'll be happy to share more or help you with it. Or you can also just directly DM me on Instagram, which it's Bhutima_myfoodlens. All right, with that, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.